stuff too.
That's just me.
Because that used to be, so Dave Wecker used to do that.
Right.
Before they did the actual requirements. After the procedure can call it in until, once he's done, then it requires the requirement of having actual.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. We'll call this June 2nd Common Council meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we got a full house tonight. That's good to see. Clerk Treasurer Price, can you please call roll?
Penny Winter. Laura Moore.
You will not be here.
Here. Spencer Kingery.
Present.
Cody No.
Here.
Mary Yates.
Here. Good. First item of business is going to be the meeting minutes for May 5th. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion so.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussions, corrections, subtractions, additions to the May 5th meeting minutes? All right, here none, all in favor of approving the May 5th Delphi Common Council meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, next item of business is going to be the department head reports. With consensus of the board, if it's all right, we enter into the minutes that you've received. The department heads, we've got quite an agenda, so okay, they don't need to vote on it. So. Very good. And we also have hard copies back there for the public, for anyone wanting to see those. So all right, next item of business is going to be the proposed Delphi redevelopment taxing units, and I do not see anyone here from the RDC. So did everybody receive the taxing unit reports submitted?
Yes.
All right. So Miriam, was this is basically just a consensus that they received them, viewed them. It's not a business action, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Needed.
She did the TIF districts last month. Yep. So this is, I think, just an addendum to, or a additional item that since the IEDC has changed all the scoping of how the TIF districts are monitored, for transparency, we put a lot more out now. So essentially that's what was in your packets, was additional information to what was submitted in May. So, all right, moving on. So for the public, for all of you that are not aware, starting January 1st, Governor Braun started several projects, bills that obviously with new administration, one of them that's going to be very critical to a lot of municipalities, especially the size of Delphi, is Senate Bill 1. A lot of meetings. They, I think, had over 300 amendments to it after it was all said and done. What this is the APV value, assessed value of your home, the taxing unit that supports municipalities. There's a lot of changes to it. Those changes are going to take cuts to the local city budget. So that's across the state. The numbers are still being kind of tossed around. There's been, I can't count the number of times I've been to Indy, and several mayors have expressing our concerns for, I don't like to pay taxes either, but at the end of the day, we have to figure out a way now to, how do we recoup those fees in order for the city of Delphi and cities across the state of Indiana to still operate? So with that being said, we have Ross Hagan from Baker Tilly. He's one of our financial consultants. I asked him to be present tonight to present an overview of what the effects are to the city of Delphi. So Ross?
Yeah, happy to jump into that. And I think everybody got a presentation from me earlier today. It kind of goes through some of this. I wanted to talk at a high level what the biggest impacts of this Senate Bill 1 really are to the city. I've got a list on the first page of those different kind of impacts. There are certainly some other ones, but these are going to be the bigger impacts, and primarily really the two bottom of the four that we show here are going to be the biggest ones for the city. So I'll hit on that third one first, which is expansion of homestead deductions and credits. So a lot of this is what the mayor's referring to, where there's kind of a lot of overhaul to how the standard deduction has worked previously versus how it will work moving forward. And then how, credits would then be applied on top of that. So I just wanted to walk you through so that the phasing of this change is going to be from, this year's 2025. So the first year of the change will be 2026. It'll phase through to 2031. And I'll caveat that you'll see when we get into kind of our analysis piece, we only got to 2028. That's because I don't want to say anything disparaging to anyone legislatively, but they changed it through 2031 and they showed what potential impacts might be through 2028. So that's what we're working with right now. So I will say, as we look at these deductions, the supplemental homestead deduction, where we started, we had a standard deduction of $48,000 this year in 2025. For residential homeowners to have that $48,000 deduction. Then you have a supplemental homestead deduction at, roughly 37.5%. In 2026, that standard deduction stays the same. Our homestead bumps up to 40%. And then starting with 2027, we start to back down those standard deduction numbers. So I'll just go through the deductions first. 2027, it goes from 48 to 40,000, 2028 down to 30,000, 2029 to 20. 30 to 10,000, and then in 2031 there will be no more standard deduction. I think from the city side that's good news, and from the residential side that's bad news. But the reason that's not the case is the replacement of that standard deduction with what was previously the supplemental homestead credit, which will now just be essentially more like the standard deduction now, but it's percentage based. So 2026 it's at 40%, which is 2.5% higher than 25. 2027 will be at 46%, 28, 52%, 29, 57%, 30, 62%. In 2031, when this is fully phased in, 2/3 of the home value will be deducted as a homestead credit. So that gets you from your gross AV to your net assessed value number that you have to pay those taxes on. So we're looking at a 2/3% kind of right off the top for those homes. In addition to that, there's some. You may be familiar with circuit breaker impacts, property tax cap impacts. So at a home level, barring referendum, some other minor things that can happen, you're kind of capped at paying 1% of your gross AV in a tax bill. It's got a 1% property tax cap. There are 2% caps and 3% caps as well. 3% is going to be more like industrial, commercial type of businesses. 2% would be farmland. It's going to be, rental properties. Those are going to be kind of your 2% buckets. Previously, the kind of 2% bucket didn't have any credits. Now we're gonna phase into some credits for the 2% bucket. So those rental property owners, farmland. So in 2025, we were at 0. That kind of scales up pretty evenly from 26 to 31. In 2031, essentially 1/3 of that property value is going to be a deduction. So that's certainly a pretty large deduction. In addition to these changes, every homestead, every residential homeowner is going to get a credit. So after the tax bill is calculated, you'll then get kind of a credit, like a below line credit, kind of like if you were to get money back on your taxes from some sort of a withholding or something. You get child tax credit's a good example. So a child tax credit, you kind of get money at the end. So everyone will get lesser of $300 or 10% of your net tax bill. That's everyone. In addition to that, anyone 65 and over will get another $150 credit. Disabled homeowners, $125 credit. Disabled vets would be another $250 credit. So all that is to say that, over the next, 5-6 years, we're gonna have pretty large changes to the property tax structure that we have. As I mentioned, LSA, which is like legislative impacts, they analyze kind of the proposed bills and some of the numbers behind those. They calculated out 26, 27, 2028 estimated changes due to this. It's a really challenging thing to calculate because there's a lot of moving pieces. As you're aware, we've got all these different types of credits where some are going up, some are going down. We've got changes in home values to play. As those NAVs go down, your tax rates are naturally going to go up, right? And then we've got, how does that all interplay with the circuit breakers, the property tax cap impacts? So it's a lot of moving pieces. The LSA estimates, they tried to kind of take that all into account through 2028, but they did it statewide in about a week. So we don't have a ton of confidence in them, but we've seen that they're pretty close in the ones that we've been able to actually get parcel by parcel level data. And dig into those ourselves, from the counties, that they're fairly close. So that's good news, at least, that we have decent numbers to work with. But certainly with caution that, from takeaways from this, noting that none of this is final. And, we're only going out to 2028 when 2031 is really kind of a fully phased in number. I also did want to mention just the local income tax changes, because those are so significant. Currently, the current local income tax system we have is going to be essentially scrapped. Starting in 2028, it's going to be replaced with a new local income tax system. How that impacts the city. So your local income tax rate is going to be capped at 2.9%, which is more than what most communities have paid in the past, but 2.9% total. But of that, the county is going to be entitled to a large portion of that. Then there's some other kind of specific provisions for smaller units. At the end of the day, what we know that you're entitled to, there's a 1.2% municipal local income tax that can be adopted by the municipalities. In most cases, in some cases by the county, but on behalf of the municipalities. So that 1.2% tax rate, if adopted, will be assessed on for Delphi, anyone who lives in, Delphi city boundaries on their income, and then you would directly get that 1.2%. So it's not like going to the county bucket and then being redistributed. It's your own lit that you have yourself. So you'll lose, those lit certified shares, the economic development income tax lit that you have right now. That'll be replaced by this municipal lit. And then there's some other things that could happen depending on what the county will do. But in most cases, we expect that 1.2% is really going to be what a city or town would be able to receive.
And that's because we're under the threshold of 3,500, correct?
So under 30, and that's, so the mayor said 3,500 population, so that's the threshold. If you're over 3,500, you would be able to adopt your own lit for that 1.2%. Under the 3,500 threshold, you have to petition the county to adopt it for you. You would petition them to adopt it in 2027 to be in effect in 2028. So we're a couple years out still. We've heard a little bit of rumblings that they may kind of change that. What you're referring to, Mayor, that maybe smaller communities can adopt it. Maybe it becomes not a request to the county, but if you apply that you want it, the county will have to do it. So there's still some moving pieces there, but I would expect that if you want the 1.2%, there will be a vehicle place for you to get the 1.2% by the time it's 28. Just quickly, a couple of minor things. We've got mention of the phase out of business personal property tax here. So over a 10-year period, it's a revenue source that's going to be going away. Not as impactful as some of these other changes, but it is something. There's also some changes to differentiation thresholds for certain types of property, commercial. So there's some changes there that can have some impact, but those aren't going to be as significant as these. The one thing that I think is also worth mentioning that can hurt you is previously there's been a method in place called the excess levy appeal, where if you as a community are growing faster than the state is growing, you can get an increase to your property taxes that you can receive, your maximum levy, kind of to compensate for that growth so that you can continue to grow and continue to provide the services, that you need to provide based on the growth that you had. That's now gone away. So we're not going to have that moving forward, at least in the immediate future till something changes there. So that's kind of the high level pieces. Any questions on that? Or I kind of step into what we saw of the city specifically. Okay, so I've got a decent amount of pages here. I really just want to focus on the next two pages, which is kind of the graphic summary. Pages 4, 5, 6, and 7 is each represents a year of potential cash flows, which is some of the major funds that you have. So, page 4 is 2025, then 26, 27, 28. We pulled that kind of all together into charts to make them a little bit more digestible. So table 1 is where I want to spend probably the majority of the time here. So these are estimated revenues. We looked at, essentially the 3 major funds that you have that are going to be most impacted here. So general and MBH being the funds that you have your property tax levy in, today in 2025. And then edit where you receive a significant amount of local income tax as well that would be kind of going away with the shift in things in 2028. So you can see in 2025, we would expect you to bring in about, $4.1 million of that in revenues across those 3 funds. Of that, about 1.2 million is your net property tax levy. So that's what you'll actually receive, at the city level. That's after applying those kind of circuit breaker property tax cap impacts. we'd expect to receive about that number. The majority of what you receive, the 2,151,000, we'll call it, is local income tax. So that is spread across your general fund and your edit fund. That also includes a supplemental lit distribution that just came out that you would receive in the last few weeks of about $157,000 for this year. So that's why if you look to 2026 and 2027, that number goes down a little bit. We're not including that supplemental lit distribution in those years because there's no guarantee that you'll get it. Hopefully you will, but we just don't know. And then your other revenues, that's kind of all else, right? Those are things like alcohol, excise tax, your financial institution tax, insurance reimbursements that you get from your utilities, so on and so forth. So these are just other revenues that you have. You get about $750,000 a year currently in those revenues. So total 4.121 million is what we have in 2025. Typically, we'd expect that to grow each year. Most specifically in the property tax side of things, we expect to grow about 4% because you have a 4% maximum levy increase that's kind of baked into the way the state does budgeting. You don't always take advantage of that, but you could take advantage of that, right? That's not the case with the changes when we factor in the changes of SB1 with credits, with starting to apply kind of that increase in those deductions. We actually show that your net levy, this is based on those legislative session impacts that they calculate at the state level. We expect that number to go from about 1,214,000 to about 1,201,000. So almost break even to where you're at now, but a slight drop off. Versus if we have a 4% increase, that's going to be growing a decent amount. So yeah, 2026, we have that number going down. Supplemental lit, we're not including, like I mentioned, that takes your lit down to just a tick below 2 million. Other revenues are going to be about the same. There's some timing stuff in there, but essentially about the same as 2025. So we have you at $3,938,000 in revenues in 2026, so about $80,000 less than in 2025. Excuse me, in 2025. 2027, similar picture. The one thing to mention is just the property tax levy. So we have that bumping back up to about $1,235,600. So the reason we have the overall decrease in 26 and then a little increase in 27, it's less than we would have otherwise if we had the normal type changes that in the past. But 26 is when we get the impact of those credits coming into play. The credits are all at once. They're happening starting in 2026 at the full amount. So we have kind of that one-time larger hit. We have a little bit more money coming in 27. But in total, we're still looking at $3,979,800. So tick under 4 million in estimated revenues in 27 versus 4,121 in 25. 2028 is the big kind of shift year because we have the lit changes. That's kind of doubly so for the city of Delphi and some other counties where there's a lit levy freeze in place, which you have in place. Can also be thought of as like a property tax replacement credit. Essentially what that is a long time ago when circuit breaker impacts were kind of coming into play a number of years ago, a number of counties adopted a levy freeze or a property tax replacement credit. Essentially what it is instead of all the money coming through property taxes and then having larger circuit breaker impacts or property tax cap impacts, some of that levy shifted over to an income tax. So what that does functionally is it lowers your property tax levy, it increases your local income tax, and it lowers your circuit breaker impacts. That is no longer a thing starting in 2028 with the new system. So those levy freezes, property tax replacement credits, that's all going away. So what you see here, we've got a large increase to property tax levies. We go from $1,235,000 in 2027 to about 1.85 million in 2028. So that's essentially the absorbing of all of that levy freeze back into your levy. I will caution what we've seen from those estimates that the state's providing is that they made an attempt to capture like impacts of circuit breaker changes, but this is a very large change to your kind of property tax structure. I mean, we're talking about a third increase in your total property taxes. I would expect significant impacts to those circuit breakers, property tax caps, without going into like a parcel by parcel level analysis and knowing what other, county overlapping units are doing. We can't say exactly what that's going to be, but I would caution you to say that I don't think we should count on the 1,850,000, probably, somewhere in between where we were at in 2027 and 2028, closer to the 2028 side, but I did just want to kind of throw out that word of caution because of all the changing parts there. The lit, so you were at about 2 million before. The number we have in 2028 is 1,522,300. What we're doing for that is we're just assuming that you're going to adopt the full 1.2% municipal rate, which you may not do, obviously, but if you do adopt it, based on 2023 census numbers, or not, the kind of updated census numbers, we've calculated this $1,522,300 number. This doesn't include growth in wages from 2023 forward. So this is probably a little bit of a conservative number. But we just didn't want to get into kind of projecting what wage increases are going to be between now and 2028. So probably between 1.5, 1.7 million roughly is probably where you land on the lit. And then we've got a little bit of an increase in other revenues. That's almost strictly from revenues that are impacted by your property tax levy. So you have like financial institution tax and excise tax. Those are taxes that are kind of a percentage of your levy. So as your levy goes up, those can go up in tandem. So we've got a small bump from that. In total, all in 2028, we show about a $4.2 million revenue number. I did want to mention if we didn't have any SB1 legislation whatsoever, we just had the 4% property tax levy growth year over year. We would be at about a levy of about 1,420,000 by 2028. So if you just kind of do the math from 2025 to 2028, we're in about the same spot all in at 2028 as we would be with or without this. Where we're going to get hurt is on the back end of 2028. So this has the shift in property tax levy. This has the shift in lit. We've still got 3 more years of phasing of those deductions coming into play. From 2029 to 2031, we show at a $240,000 home value, which is like average Indiana home. We've run some numbers before. So just illustratively, you'd see each year from 29 to 31 about a 7.5% reduction in net assessed values for your tax base annually. So that's based on if every home was $240,000, that's what the reduction will look like. Obviously, that's not exactly going to be the case, but we can't run every single home. But we would expect to see a pretty significant drop in net assessed value still from 29 to 2031, with no kind of shifts in lit to compensate for that, and no shifts in the property tax levy. That's all kind of absorbed in 2028. So I think you're going to continue to see impacts of kind of stagnant property tax growth from 29 to 31 as we phase this in. Obviously, the concern there is we've been in a period of high inflation for a number of years now. I can't speak to what inflation is going to be 29 to 31, but if it continues at this level, we're going to be facing some pretty challenging times with stagnant or even in some cases, depending on your circuit breaker impacts, declining revenues with large growth in inflation. So it's certainly been, the mayor mentioned it, I'm sure he's talked to council before about this in a high level, but mayors all over the state, council members all over the state, clerks very concerned about this for good reason. It's going to put a really big strain on the finances of a lot of municipalities. There may be changes between now and 28, 29, 31 with legislation that alleviate some of that. But based on what we know today, it is going to be challenging. As we look at, I'll just mention table 2. We did the same kind of analysis for your fire territory. It's not obviously significant. You can kind of see the numbers there, but we do see still that increase in property tax levy in 2028. The lit going away. I did want to mention this. So because the fire territory is not, the cities have provided a unit for the fire territory, but it's not part of your funds. So you wouldn't have that 1.2% municipal rate that we kind of talk about. So you see here that the lit goes away. There is a caveat that within the county's portion of lit that they can adopt above that cap that I talked about, the 2.9%. A small portion of that can go to fire territories. So 0.2% of the 2.9% is reserved for units that are not cities and towns essentially, or counties. So 0.2% total lit. Of those, you can get 1/4 of that for a specific type of unit of government. So fire territories could, in theory, get a quarter of 0.2%. So that would be, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it would be something, right, to help assist the fire territory. In that pool of units of government that are looking for that money, part of that 0.2 though, we've got our schools, libraries, townships. So there's a lot of other units that are going to be competing for that small amount of money. Depending on county's priorities, maybe you could get your full fair share of that, maybe not, but this analysis, we didn't include that. We've still got, because of that kind of levy change in 2028, where we drop off that property tax replacement credit. The fire territory is kind of impacted positively by that. You gain about $25,000 in revenues between 25 and 2028. And I do want to show you too, if you turn the page just to table 3, this is the one I want to focus on for the general engage and edit fund, and this is kind of supported by the pages in the back. Just I'm not going to go through the detail, but we just show total estimated ending fund balances as we add these 3 funds together. So we didn't do a big deep dive into this. We're basically using your budget that you've adopted for 2025. We're taking out for 26, 27, 28, some of the things that we know are irregular, like the community crossing grant match. Maybe you will do that in the future, but if you don't, we don't have that in there twice, right? So we do see declining cash pretty significantly between 25 and 28 across those 3 funds. We'd expect at the end of 2025, you'd be at about $4.6 million across those 3 funds if you spend the full level of your budget. That going down in 26 to 4.3 million, 3.9 in 27, and then 3.6 in 28. So again, that's the impact of really stagnant revenues, right? A slight drop in revenues and then stagnant revenues, and we're including like 3% inflation for your regular services. So personal services, supplies, services, and charges. We're including a 3% inflationary bump in those. We're not increasing capital or anything, but we would expect still some inflationary increases. So that certainly will hit the city. Historically, you haven't spent your full budget. So there's reason to think that maybe you won't be in quite this shape, but you do adopt the budget for a reason, right? And we have had high inflation, so certainly could be spending that full budget. So I think we need to kind of plan for the possibility that you could do that. So I did want to illustrate that across these funds, that we show kind of the declining cash flow. By the time we got into 2021, that issue could certainly escalate if we do see some big circuit breaker impacts, if we see our property tax levy staying stagnant. But this is one of those things that, as we're having discussions around the state, we're just recommending trying to get as much out ahead of it as you can. The more you're planning in 2025 and 2026, while the impacts are really small, I think the better position you are for 2028, 2029, so on and so forth, when those impacts start to come a lot, heavier and heavier. So certainly can talk about, go through any questions you have, talk about things that other communities are doing, prepare, whatever you'd like, but I did just want to kind of show you roughly based on what, the legislative analysis has shown for your property taxes, what you're looking at in terms of impacts from now through 2028, which is kind of an out the table release in terms of those revenues.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any questions from the board? And the reason why this was good timing for Ross to present this is obviously we're getting ready to go into budget sessions and meetings. So this kind of gives us a general peek at what's coming. But again, there's so much involved and so many moving parts that it's hard to really nail down anything other than be prepared, right? So
Completely agree, Mayor. And some of the stuff that we, the stuff that we're doing now, a lot of it's for the 4 ways, South Bend's the ones that really, want to jump right away and get going on this stuff. But we're looking at things like what, revenue sources aren't you tapping into right now that you could be tapping into? What are your options there? How do those impact tax rates if they're tax rates? Starting to do 5-year, 10-year kind of cash flows where we can kind of, move some inputs and assumptions to see how things maneuver. We've started doing strategic planning with some. So it's kind of a whatever people want, we're trying to do. But it's certainly a challenge. So, if you have questions or want to explore anything, happy to do it. But just happy to be there as a partner for the city.
thank you, Ross. Any questions for Ross?
So 2028's the kind of the cutoff year of what happens next.
Yeah, I agree. I think 2028, that's when the big shift happens because of the lit, especially so in the counties like Carroll County that have the lit levy freeze in place. So if we don't hear anything in the next legislative session, it's probably going to be this, right? Because you're going to be adopting in 2027 those lit rates for 2028. they're probably not gonna wanna wait till the very last, I mean, who knows, right? But they're probably not gonna wait till the very last minute, last year. But I agree, 28 is when that really kind of triggers that big change because of the lid. And then beyond that, we're just continuing to phase in those deductions.
Which 2028 sounds like a long ways away, but
It won't
wait,
be.
it's not at all when you're dealing with preparing for, you know, what's coming. So that's why I wanted the department heads to be here to kind of, there's a lot to it and you're not, a lot of it's going to be confusing and all that, but at the end of the day, once we're going into budgets, the more we prepare now, the better for when, I'm not sure that the 2031, you know, we don't know what's going to happen in 28, right? So but we do know for the next 3 to 4 years that this is something that we don't have a choice, that we need to prepare for it now and not start in 2027. So thank you again, Ross. Appreciate your time putting together a report for the council and.
Yeah.
All right. So if there's any other questions for him?
We ask the audience if they have any specific. maybe-
Sure. Any questions from the audience? Is everybody's head spinning out there with if it's not, it probably will once we get rolling with the yearly budgets and all that in the future. So
So you feeling better, and it's been saying months, this bill that the mayor referenced, it's about 350 pages long. It's a lot of information.
yeah, it is.
I do request that the public, if they do come up with questions, let us know because.
Sure.
It's stuff that we don't think of.
Yeah.
Cause I honestly, I want to make sure we're prepared for this, especially the 2028 shift. So
Sure. We got,
let's get ahead of it while we can.
all right. Very good.
Well, any questions come up, feel free to reach out my way.
Okay.
Happy to answer those, provide any other analysis, want help budget, whatever you need, just let us know.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Ross.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. So one of the items Ross mentioned was how do we recoup what we're going to lose, right? So we made an effort last month to kind of get that process going by adopting a cum cap ordinance. Julie, you want to give a brief overview of just real quick of what happened with that and where we will moving forward?
So for the public advertisements, when the newspaper put it in the newspaper, they accidentally printed the fire territory capital twice instead of theirs once and then the cities. So that in turn caused us to have to redo everything with the time constraints. There wasn't enough time, so it's something that we had to scrap and we would have to start over again next year because the deadline is May 31st. So you only get that window every year from May till May 31st. So that being said, there wasn't enough time to, because by state statute, you have to have so many days of advertising between and all that stuff for public hearings. And so there wasn't enough time to be able to start it all over again. So we're gonna have to scrap it and possibly start it again next year if that's something that the council would like to do.
Again, that was just my goal is not to keep adding taxes and making anything any tougher for today's it's just there's always challenges added, it seems like every week, but at the end of the day, we're challenged with recouping the funds that we need to function as a municipality. So thank you for the update, and if that's something that we deem to dive into for next year, then we certainly can, but for this year, the cum cap ordinance is a no-go. So all right, very good. Moving on to the first item of business for this evening is going to be proposed ordinance 2025-4, which was transferring the governance of Morning Heights Cemetery to the Board of Works. So last month we presented this to the board. We did pass on first reading. So tonight we will try to tidy up some additional items with the Morning Heights Cemetery. There's been a lot of stuff thrown at us with cemeteries that we had no idea about, but we've learned a lot. So anyway, the board has been presented with proposed ordinance 2025-4, transferring governance of Morning Heights Cemetery to the Board of Works. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Kingery. Nelson. All right. Any discussion from the board on proposed ordinance 2025-4? Again, we did first reading in May. Nothing has changed with any of the language. All right, hear none. All in favor of approving ordinance 2025-4 on second reading? An ordinance that transferring governance of Morning Heights Cemetery to the Delphi Board of Works, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, very good. Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 2025-4 on third and final reading? Motion transferring governance of Morning Heights Cemetery to the Board of Works.
So moved.
Very good. Have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion?
Denny.
Denny Myers. Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of approving ordinance 2025-4, transferring the governance of Morning Heights Cemetery to the Board of Works on third and final reading, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries 4-0. Next item of business is proposed ordinance 2025-5, amending the fee for purchase of burial plots in Morning Heights Cemetery. Is there a motion to approve on second reading?
I'll make a motion.
Second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Discussion on proposed ordinance 2025-5.
I make a motion, where to make a motion, so, the fee, schedule, I came up with $1,200.
How much did you say?
1,200.
Yeah.
So did you guys all get your packet? We tried to find as much documentation we can for what all city costs were incorporated into the process, right? The surveys, the deeds, everything involved, I think.
52,412.
Yeah, so are we going to recapture every penny? No, but at the end of the day, the goal is to recapture as much as we can, but also keep it at a price that's fair to the people that's purchasing the plot. So I know we have several people that's ready to move forward on this once we adopt it. So any further discussion? This has been a long process, a lot of information thrown at you, but
I agree with you. Agree.
I agree.
so you said
$1,200.
the second part to was there two different there's two costs. There was one for the burial.
The one for the transfer, right?
There was, so we got one for the purchase of the burial plots. And then the fee to per plot. Okay. Okay, so that's gonna be the only, for this ordinance, it's gonna be the only fee attached to that.
Yep.
So, any further discussion from the board? Nope. You wanna? So we're gonna have to make the motion that incorporates the cost into it,
So
so.
we can do that on the third. We do that on the third one, since we motion approved for the second
Mhm.
reading. And then we approve it, and then
Yep.
I'll amend the motion in the third meeting.
All right, very good. I have a motion and a second for proposed ordinance 2025-5, amending the fees for purchase of burial plots in Morning Heights Cemetery. All in favor of approving, signify by stating aye.
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 Opposed?
Yeah. I'll give it.
Motion carries.
Make a motion that we approve the amending of the fees in 2025-5 to $1,200 for the burial plot.
Denny Myers and Spencer. All right, very good. I have a motion and a second to amend the fees for ordinance 2025-5 to $1,200 per plot. Any further discussion from the board? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving amending the fees for the purchase of the burial plots in Morning Heights Cemetery to $1,200 per plot, signify by stating aye.
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 Opposed? Very good. All right, so that is the second. That is it for unfinished business. Now we'll move on to new business in your packets. The board was presented with proposed ordinance 2025-6, approving the additional appropriation of the Delphi Township Fire Protection Territory. Is there a motion to approve?
Like to approve. Second.
All right, so I have a motion.
Nice second.
Yep. Nelson. I have a motion, a second. Any discussion, questions, comments from the board? We have members of the township territory here if you have any additional questions. Good, Denny? Okay. All right, hearing none, all in favor of approving ordinance 2025-6, approving the additional appropriation for the Delphi Tri-Township Fire Protection Territory, signify by stating aye.
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 All right, and I believe, so this is something that, there's a timeline for this one as well, right? So for the bank and to get to the numbers. So I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules on a night of introduction to pass second and third and final readings on ordinance 2025-6, the additional appropriation for the Delphi Tri-Township Fire Protection Territory. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules on night introduction for ordinance 2025-6. Any discussion from the board? All right, hear none, all in favor of suspending the rules for the second and third reading of ordinance 2025-6, approving the additional appropriation for the Delphi Tri-Township Fire Territory, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So a motion to approve ordinance 2025-6 on second reading, a motion or an ordinance approving additional appropriation for the Delphi Tri-Township Fire Protection Territory.
Second.
Dick Myers, Cody Nelson. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or comments from the board? Here none, all in favor of approving ordinance 2025-6 on second reading. An ordinance approving the additional appropriation of the Delphi Tri-Township Fire Protection Territory, signify by stating aye.
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 Motion carries. Is there an ordinance to approve ordinance 2025-6 on third and final reading? An ordinance approving additional appropriation of the Delphi Tri-Township Fire Protection Territory.
Make the motion to approve. Second. Yeah, there you go.
Kingery, Nelson. All right. Any discussion, questions, comments from the board?
No.
No.
Here none. All in favor of approving ordinance 2025-6 on third and final reading, approving the additional appropriation for the Delphi Tri-Township Fire Protection Territory. Signify by stating aye.
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 That is a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of words. Very good. All right, very good. Thank you. All right, next item of business is going to be proposed ordinance 2025-7, establishing the CCMG fund. Julie, you want to give us a quick overview of why this is needed per State Board of Accounts?
Yes. State Board of Accounts says that anytime we get any kind of grants, after our last audit, that we need to have a fund established so that those funds, when we that we allocate them for a specific project. So because there are two parts of this, we had to give each one an appropriation number, but we can use the same fund number. So when we have an invoice come in, that money that's earmarked for that particular project goes from that fund with that appropriation number. And it doesn't accidentally get put towards something else. So it's for State Board of Accounts.
It's essentially tracking and cleaning it up,
Yeah.
right? So it's a lot easier for for NDOT as well as us, right? So we obviously allocated 500,000 for our end. Now this will be a separate ordinance establishing numbers to where we can track for two separate projects, right? We have the Market Street project and we have the preventative maintenance. So just something that cleans things up and makes it easier for clerk's office, NDOT and the contractor as well. So, all right, very good. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 2025-7 establishing the CCMG fund number 2442 on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions from the board? Hearing none, all in favor of approving ordinance 2025-7 establishing the CCMG fund 2442 on first reading, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Julie, is this? So we have not received the 1.5 million from NDOT to date. But this is something that's not going to change. It's something that we would like to be in place for once those funds are received, to where then we can start dialing in on, because they're getting ready to mobilize and start construction pretty soon, correct, Aaron? Okay, so they're ready to go, right? So we have all the parts and pieces in place and we've made notification, so
Make a motion, we suspend the rules so we can pass the 2025-7 establishing CMG fund.
Second.
We want it.
Julie, who'd you put down?
I said Spencer for the motion and second from Aaron.
Okay.
I didn't hear anybody else.
No. No.
Sorry.
Okay, no, that's all right. I just want to make sure you had for the meeting minutes. All right, I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules on the night of introduction for ordinance 2025-7, establishing the CCMG Fund 2442. All in favor of approving, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 2025-7 on second reading? For ordinance 2025-7, establishing the CCMG Fund number 2442.
I think that was any for the second.
Kingery and Myers. All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion for ordinance 2025-7? Hearing none, all in favor of approving ordinance 2025-7 on second reading, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 2025-7 on third and final reading? An ordinance establishing the CCMG Fund number 2442.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any final thoughts, discussion, concerns? All right, hearing none, all in favor of approving ordinance 2025-7 on third and final reading on the night of introduction, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Very good. All right, next item of business is going to be proposed resolution 2025-7, a transfer of appropriations. The council has been presented with the proposed transfer. Is there a motion to approve proposed resolution 2025-7?
Second.
All right, any questions, comments, questions, or discussion from the board? We also have members from the fire territory here. Okay. Hearing none. I have a motion and a second to approve proposed resolution 2025-7, transfer of appropriations. All in favor of approving, signify by stating aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That is it for our business related voting matters. Future business. So the common council needs to, after we've now heard from Ross Hagan on kind of what we're looking at, an overview for budget impacts, we need to start setting budget hearing dates. We wanted to wait till after his presentation to dive into it. So tonight we can start looking at available dates for the council.
The workshop dates, right? Or did budget workshop dates?
Julie?
Yeah.
Was that a question for Julie?
Yeah, that was a question.
Yes.
I guess one question I have for you guys, did everybody have a chance to take the AIM budget workshop?
I did.
No.
I did not.
So I believe
Is it
you
during
can
business
still
hours?
get on, if,
Is it recorded?
yes, you can get logged in and still watch it. So
Okay.
it's gonna be an hour and a half.
To do it live.
So grab some popcorn and kick back because it's a lot of it is stuff that we deal with every day. But then a lot of it ties into kind of things that we need to look forward to, right? So before we do any of that, we need to set some dates.
Are we thinking in July or June, into June?
Yeah.
Didn't we do July last year?
Wow, goodness.
I feel like it was July last year, wasn't it?
We were running a little behind.
We were behind.
Yeah,
though.
so we're ahead, we're on time this year.
That's what I'm saying. We were kind of kicking it.
Just saying.
Here.
A lot of mayors I've spoken to are doing the same thing. We're waiting on their financial advisor to kind of give them an overview before they start set meeting dates. So luckily enough, I text Ross last week or a couple weeks ago and got this nailed down. So we have a pretty good document. I think they did a good job of presenting
Yeah.
the numbers for the next 4 to 5 years. And again,
What about June 23rd? Okay, so the second day. June 16th. June 16th.
we got to put it, we have to publicize it, right? Do we have to put this? this- Is that for this is workshops. Yeah.
Yeah,
So once we get to the point of the actual public hearings, we gotta, yeah, so.
June 16th at 6.
Okay, got it.
You good with that? June 16th. June 16th at 6.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
And I'll check with Councilman Moore afterwards, just to make sure that
Follows the Board of Works meeting.
yep. Which that'll work out well, because everybody's already got it. Oh. Yeah, so. We do 2 or 3, so do we want to go ahead and schedule out,
Yes.
kind of put a, yeah.
Please.
So we got June 16th
Mhm,
at 6 PM.
mhm. Oh, you said you're not gonna be here the 23rd, right? You'll be gone till the 28th. I'm gone that whole next week.
Let's do it in July.
Yeah.
Due on July.
Mhm.
So we have a council meeting
I
on
will be
the
back on the
7th.
I am in town by the 30th, if everyone's can do that.
I'd rather just have 7th. The
The 7th.
regular meeting, yeah.
Just do it right after. Yeah.
So do it after the council meeting on the 7th. So, okay.
Same time, 6.
Well, we'll have our meeting first.
Yeah, so it'll be,
Immediately.
Yeah.
yep. So you guys want to leave it at that now to see if
Yep.
two is enough, or last year I know we had an additional one, and so if that's the
Think two.
case, then we can schedule at that time.
Yep, 2 for now.
Yep. All right, everybody good with the 2 dates proposed? Good.
Yep.
All right, any additional board comments?
I guess 2 things. So I've had a few people complain to me about trash blowing from the Bowen Estates. I've reached out to Malacus Construction 3 times and Drake Malacus himself. I'm not had any word back, and trash just stuff running all over the place.
Is this trash from the contractors or where's the,
But the some contractors, they pile it outside
okay,
and it blows because there's no trees to stop the wind anymore, so. I don't know that they pick up at the end of each day either, they just kind of throws it back down and done with it. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe that gets addressed. They're subcontractors, but still, they should probably be
I can,
held to the standard.
make contact with Mr. Malakas in the morning.
Like I said, I called him today. I'll give him a little more time. And then number two, I just want to bring this up just to avoid the appearance of a conflict. I had myself on multiple lists of the big construction companies in the local area, Reith Riley, F&K, a bunch of them. Ever prior to knowing about this project, I had myself on like a list to get material, like meaning like concrete. Because I have a lot of big holes at one of my properties, so I'm going to be accepting a lot of material from this project, no cost. I'm not making any money out of it. I just want to fill holes. So,
But this was done prior to any of this, so
yeah,
that's
this was
the,
done like 2-3 years ago. I've just been waiting. I thought I was gonna get material from a project Monticello, but it didn't pan out, so.
okay. Any additional comments from the board, concerns? Nope. One other thing, I sent you guys a couple pictures. Want to get your thoughts on the chairs. Some of these chairs, I think have been here since the 80s. I know this one and that one, I've had several people say,
I'm short and I can hardly get my feet on the ground.
yeah, the padding is wore down. They're starting to show their age, so want to get the council's consensus on replacing them. I sent you a couple options, but ultimately it's whatever you guys. But the two I sent you are from the vendor that we use for a lot of the office stuff currently. So they've definitely been here for a while. I think the brown ones have been here since the 80s. So Carolyn, you was here. I'm not, no, I mean, so do you have I don't mean that in a bad way, but do you remember roughly? No, okay. I was just curious. Because
Get your chair if you want to sit someplace. and
do
try
you
it.
want to sit down in one again to kind of refresh your memory? But you know, they've had a lot of use. They've been here for a while, and it'd be nice to have chairs that were one uniform and two had some padding. So any ideas on that? Is that a yes? Everybody agree, or do we want to
I
what?
don't think, I think I'm indifferent on which one you choose, really.
I don't care which one you choose. She will learn out better, but
Right.
I'm indifferent. I don't know that we need new chairs, but that's fine.
And it's your guys' decision. I just wanted to put it out there because I hear a lot of people say, my gosh, these chairs are, they can't hardly get up after they're done sitting in them. So it's,
I don't care.
either way, it's fine. I just wanted to run it by you. All right.
Your discretion.
Of course.
Your discretion.
Your discretion.
I'm okay with you getting chairs if you need to get them, because
Okay.
other people use them besides us.
That's true.
Yeah, we have a lot of meetings in here. Couple things real quick. Julia's still here. Yep. Julia, would you mind breaking if for those that weren't here for the Board of Works meeting?
Chance to read the press release I sent to y'all Friday. We had a big announcement where, the city, Delphi Main Street has been working closely with the city and the Parks Board for a $200,000 donation. That was made in honor of the Bowen family, and I've been meeting with Nancy. She's one of the sisters. She's 90. We have been for quite a while. She wanted to give back in honor of her family to Delphi. So working close with the Parks Department, and they'll be making some decisions tomorrow night, but it'll be some major enhancements at Riley Park.
That's awesome.
Her family was the one that donated the land in the 1930s, Stephen Maker Riley, so it's
Oh,
kind of a
that's so
cultural
cool.
moment. So, anyway, we're excited. Delphi Main Street's gonna manage the funding. Parks Board's gonna do all the work. So,
Awesome.
Anyway,
Next.
yeah.
We've overloaded Superintendent Lyons with all kinds of cool ideas. So his head is full and spinning prior to that. So thank you for your patience and working through all that. So a couple of things I mentioned in the Board of Works. One is still getting a lot of complaints from the public on dog feces in the downtown square. Please take a bag with you. Another one that I did miss was please mow your grass towards your property. I can't express enough that grass that accumulates on city infrastructure can cost a city millions of dollars. So you take grass that piles up over years and years and years. One, it attracts mosquitoes. Two, that basically turns into concrete. It jams up the drains. It causes a lot of damage. I sat through a couple webinars and from cities that's dealt with this, and it can be a very expensive fix. So we ask that you please mow it, and also for the safety of the public. So mow it towards your property. What was the other thing I had? I put my sheet in the office. If you're driving through, the kids are out of school, right? So their kids are going to be kids. If we're getting additional complaints of people that's driving through the city streets rather quickly. This is something we visit every year. It's not just when the kids are out. So we ask, please slow down in our city with our kids out of school. You know, not just when they're out of school, but every day. A lot of our roads are skinny. Some of them are down to one way. And just on my road alone, I've had a couple close calls with kids because they're out being kids. They're riding their bikes. They're doing things that kids do. And the last thing any of us want is a child hurt in our city because someone that was in a hurry to get through the city street. So please slow down and watch out for our kids. So any board comments? We did that. Clerk Treasurer Price.
The golf carts.
Yes, that's what it was.
I sent out letters to people who have golf carts or ATVs registered that have not updated their registrations for the 2025 year with a different color sticker. So I sent out letters just reminding them that that would need to be done in case they haven't done it. And if they don't have that vehicle or that thing that needs to be registered any longer, just to let us know. So.
The good news is we have a lot of golf carts that people's taking advantage of it, and it frees up some space for vehicles. Yeah, so
We have 60.
we just need to make sure that they are all permitted and the ordinance is followed. So thank you for all your work on that, Julie. All right. Any public comments? Yes, sir.
I would like to put on the docket next month, some sort of discussion about allowing chickens, like making it easier for people
And
to get chickens in low density residential.
And your name is?
Jacob Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacob.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What, you live in the city limits, Jacob?
Yes, sir.
For the record? So, okay. So you would like to be added to the July docket?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. And he's mentioned to
Exactly sure how to word it.
yeah. So we'll label it in July as
Chickens.
yeah. So
I'm taking the debt.
okay. Any other public comments? If not, there's a quiz on the Senate Bill 1 presentation. So if you can all stick around. No. No public comments. All right. Miriam? No. Thank you guys for being here and hearing our concerns with the possible Senate Bill 1, and we're all going to work together on it and get diving on it, but it's going to be a task. So with that being said, there's just one last motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The June 2nd Board of Works is adjourned at 7:03 PM. Thank you, guys.
Yep.